Welcome back to the Terminator Captain Painting Guide for Combat Patrol. In this episode, we're going to concentrate on how to paint faces and the hair for our captain. And you can use these painting techniques on any of the bare flesh for Space Marines. We're going to need Kislev flesh, Dark Oath flesh, which is a contrast, Sigvold burgundy, white acrylic ink, Celestra grey, and Mechanicus standard grey. Make sure you have your miniature in your stripped down position. This bit will just get in the way. We're going to have to be careful on this one because we already have all the metal painted in around him, and because it's dry brushed, it's going to be harder, not impossible, but harder to rectify any mistakes. Start with the Kislev flesh. We're not going to need a great deal for this. Just mix up a small amount. And again, use back of your thumb as a little flow test. Once you're happy, jump onto the miniature. I'm only painting the flesh areas. I'm being very careful on this one. Go right up to that implant on the side of his head. Everything else on the face is fair game. To get to the other side, I turn the miniature upside down. That lets me, because I'm right-handed, get in and not get into all these sort of weird, funny positions and get the brush in the wrong place. Then the paint goes in the wrong place. Get a little bit more there. I can get away with using a layer paint here because the undercoat's nice and bright. Right, let's put a couple of coats on that and we'll jump back in. That is 2 layers thoroughly dried and some good coverage. Okay, what I'm going to take next is Dark Oath flesh, neat. I'm going to apply this as a shade. It'll come off quite strong, but that's okay. I'm going to turn it upside down to avoid going into areas you shouldn't. Yeah, that's more than sufficient. Yeah, so I'll thoroughly dry that and go on to our first highlight. That's our shade, thoroughly dry. That is as dark as the face is going to get, but our next highlight will be back to Kislev flesh. Right, so this next step's entirely up to you. If you want to make the more emotion, more anger in the miniature, we're going to leave more dark recesses showing. The more paint we throw on there, the more we cover those up, the more mellow he's going to look. So again, entirely up to you, but apply little and then add more to taste. Okay. I'm still using my medium sort of workhorse brush here, cheap Chinese one. It's on a nice little hook on the end of it now, which is quite good for stabbing into areas. One line continuously down his forehead, the entire length of his nose. I'm going to join the forehead up to it. I'll repeat on the other side. He's got these little service studs. Now you can cut those off if you want to. Give him a flat forehead or leave them on there. If you leave them on there, I would advise painting them. Also, it looks like he's got spots. I'm going to get his eyebrows, paint them in thoroughly. Try and leave a slight line between the bridge of his nose and his eyebrows. For his nose itself, I start with the nostril and work toward the tip. Like so, and I'll repeat the other side. Got a bit of paint there, that's annoying. The sides of the nose, I'll just leave those. Okay, so under his eyes, he has an eyelid and this top of his cheek. I'm going to try and just hit the top of that eyelid directly underneath it as well. Because we left a shadow line in between, it looks like he's got really heavily hooded eyes. I'll pay off in a minute. We have the laughter line, I think it's called, from the nostril down to the cheek. Keep testing your paints as you go. I'm going to do the top of the lip. His jowl, bottom cheek. Join them up. Bottom lip. And chin. Flipping the miniature over, the other side of his face. This does take a little bit of getting used to, but not as much as you may think. It's a little bit more shaded as well. It can get away with not giving these as much attention. Otherwise, yeah, just repeat what I've already done. Okay, we've left quite a lot of shadows there. What I will do is give a couple of extra touch-ups just to really reinforce those and get more colour gradient in. It is a layer paint after all. Cool. That's the first highlight done. For the second highlight, I'll take my existing Kisler flesh, this one here. I'm just going to drop one bit of white in there, and I'll mix that all up thoroughly. You shouldn't need to dilute this because the ink is has a much lower viscosity, so all mixed in thoroughly. That's going to be a highlight. There'll be quite a little bit of that. That's okay because we're going to need it for a couple more steps and touching up any bits that we may have missed or paint over by accident. I'm going to swap out that cheap Chinese brush for this slightly different cheaper Chinese brush. It has a much finer point on it. Test it. Yeah, good flow, good coverage. I'm just going to pick out a little dot for the bridge of his nose. If the paint comes off the brush. There we go. On top of his eyebrows. Get a bit of a V going on his forehead. Really accentuates what's going on there. Tip of the nose. And at least that nostril. I'm going to leave the eyelid as it is. I'm just going to paint in that line from nostril to jowl. Top of that cheek. Paint in that lip. A little bit messier than I would have liked, but there we go. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I do all the time. There we go. Much better. That's as far as we're going to take the flesh for now. So I'm going to put a bit of darker flesh underneath it, between the lip and the chin, because I seem to have covered that. Likewise, any other areas you think, just do a little bit of shading. Under his nose, for example. Let's put a little bit more in. Yeah, that'll do. And now I'll thoroughly dry the miniature again. We're going to take a tiny amount of Sigvold Burgundy and thin it down even more. Water will do for this. We'll get that colour there. Just going to use this as a stain. So again, still, yeah, perfect. Probably a bit too much on my brush, so I'm going to wick some away. Yeah, that's better. Well, and we're going to apply this to the inside of his mouth, his bottom lip, and his eyelids. Can add it a little bit around the sort of the augmetic as well, because it's probably not a very good job on the flesh is rejecting it. We're sort of throwing a little bit of reddish tint into the skin there. And we'll thoroughly dry it. Next up, our Mechanicus Standard Grey. As a base paint, it's going to behave. I want a little bit more flow. It's a bit sticky there. Tiny bit more water. Now we're going to paint in that those service studs, his hairline. That's it for this paint. Over the hairline, because it's already a grey, and that should take a great deal. We need to be super careful. Just trying to get those service studs. So there's 2 of them. 1 and 2. Done. Right, let's get this highlighted. We're going to use Celestra Grey base paint, so we're going to get a good test. Yeah, I think that's good flow. Yeah, paint in the hairline, the service stud, the teeth, and the eyes. Right. We're just going to give the impression of hair, so just little strokes ending at the hairline. Wherever you pull the brush off last tends to be where the paint pools the most, so give it a few seconds to dry, then concentrate on the tip on the hairline itself. I'll accentuate that. Got a lovely seasoned veteran there. Just try to catch the service studs as well inside the Mechanicus Standard Grey you just painted. There. Let's see how well I can do the eyes today. You could probably get away with not doing these yourself. Oh, I've got one. I'm not flipping it upside down for this one, so it never quite works for me. Yep, I think I've got that one too. And it has gone a little off track if you look from that angle. But from that angle, it looks okay. The last little bit we're going to do is get those teeth. Now, let's assume he's got a perfect set. We're just going to hit the top line. Like so. There's bottom. There. Really tricky part we're painting in is his pupils. My previous mix of Mechanicus Standard Grey. I'm going to try and get inside Celestra Grey. Like so. And that's all that needs to be done on his face. I've made that look really easy. So from start to finish, including all the little errors I might have cut out, that was 20 minutes. You don't have to take long. We could take a lot longer on this. You could spend hours and get Golden Demon winning entries. But what I've just shown you there is more than sufficient. And a lot of it, again, you just practice. With the right shades and the right inks in the right places, you can completely change the expression on this guy's face. But the important thing is, have fun, have a play, find out what works for you. Now, skin tones, yeah, you can use whatever you want. I've used Kislev Flesh. I prefer Ironrack Skin normally, which is a greenish tint. People who use Bronze Flesh, which is a yellower tone. I've seen people use greys. But just use what you think works or what you think looks cool. Right. Well, I'll see you on the next one. We'll probably cover the purity seals.